Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go live on S4 with Eric Cooper. Prepare to go to the edge.
3 years. Over 1,000 followers. 30,000 downloads in the archives. Welcome to S4. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to S4, the official radio broadcast of Forest Moon Paranormal, with host Eric Cooper and our panel of enlightened minds. Coming to you live from FMP headquarters located in the heart of Skagit Valley, Washington, at the base of the majestic North Cascade Mountains. We will take you through a journey of exploration as we examine every aspect of the metaphysical. From spirits, UFOs, Bigfoot, and conspiracies, to grounding, protection, astral travel, and everything in between, leaving you with a better understanding and comprehension of the world around you, and the entities that inhabit it.
Join us every Saturday night at Spreaker.com and locally on KSVU 90.1. Don't forget to check out our new webpage at www.s-4radio.com.
Now sit back, open your mind, get ready, because this is S4.
Good evening or morning, depending where you are, and welcome to S4, the dark voice for the paranormal and conspiracy, coming to you live from the S4 headquarters in the heart of the Cascade Mountains of eastern Skagit County in Washington State. S4 is the voice where you'll hear everything covering all aspects of the paranormal, from hauntings and alien interaction, Bigfoot and other cryptids, and everything in between that makes you question reality. We also cover topics for safety, such as disaster and terrorist response and preparation, and veterans issues on Memorial and Veterans Days. Not only can you find S4 right here on Spreaker and www.s-4radio.com, but for our local listeners, also on KSVU 90.1 FM from 10 to 12 p.m. on Saturdays with pre-recorded shows. So, tonight, it's November 2nd. And don't forget to fall back, as it is daylight savings time, and we get to sleep an extra hour, I think. So this month is special for me, as it's Veterans Day. Next weekend will be our actual Veterans Day show, where we will discuss war and veterans issues. What is PTSD? And things like that. So tonight, however, we will be talking the military and the paranormal. There always seems to be ghost stories on base. I've heard them. Don's heard them. UFOs in Vietnam. And the National Guard Bigfoot recovery at Mount St. Helens in the 80s. We've all heard of the stories. Now we're going to discuss them and more. So tonight with us we have Don Davidson, our California consultant and Army veteran. Jamie Justice, our upriver consultant and neighbor to S4. And Richard Benak, astral instructor and Air Force intelligence veteran. So how are we doing tonight, guys?
Wonderful. Great, Eric.
Oh, is it cold enough for you?
Hey.
It's been freezing here. What? Hell, Don, you're in California, so what's California weather like?
It's getting cold, but cold to us is like 50, 60 degrees, so I don't know, imagine what you guys are doing over in Washington
park
right
on?
now,
Well, are you next to the fires or no?
We're in the valley, so all the smoke goes into the valley. So I don't know exactly how close we are to the fires. They're certainly not as close as they were last year.
Yeah, you guys are always burning anyway.
Yeah, sounds
Oh,
about right.
so I wanted to. We always talk when we do our veterans show. We always talk about veterans issues, but we never actually talk about paranormal. And because paranormal is a platform for S4, I figured we'd start the month off with paranormal and military, and then of course, next week we have our veterans show. So, Rich, when you were Air Force, did you ever encounter anything paranormal?
No, I didn't do a lot with the paranormal. One of my jobs was I managed our database access to the Ray Patterson Foreign Technology Division. These are the guys that ran the Blue Book program. So, occasionally if somebody would ask us, about, hey, the UFOs or things like that, I would have one of my people run a query against the FTD database, but again, it was all pretty much classified. But from what I remember, there was nothing, terribly exotic. So I mean, perhaps they sanitized the information, but my own experience, it didn't really get involved a whole lot with the paranormal. But at the time, I really didn't believe that much in it, so I might have missed it.
Right. Hey, it's funny you say that because I didn't actually get into the paranormal until 1990 when I was my first duty station was Stuttgart. Uh, and it's funny how that works. And so, why do you think that is? Why? And I know I'm not the only one. There's other people that joined the military, never been interested in the paranormal, but all of a sudden the paranormal finds them. Is it because now you're a soldier?
It could be. One of the things is working in intelligence is, and I'm sure working with intelligence and special operations, you tend to get people who think differently than the traditional military. So you're kind of paid to think outside the box. So, one of the things like I remember was we looked at a lot of the old Soviets during the Cold War, and they were big believers in the paranormal and at the time we didn't quite understand it because our paradigm for dealing with it in the U.S. military is very different. But the Soviets, because they come from a very different culture, a lot of it was associated with like the Russian Orthodox Church, which has a lot of mysticism about it. They were big believers in it, so we kept trying to understand why they believed in it, and it was very interesting. Like I said, it's just you didn't
That's
necessarily understand it. God,
no, what that's I never thought of it that way. That's an interesting point though, because every culture's got their own beliefs and their own views of paranormal in general. And being a soldier's traveled to all these different cultures all the time, yeah, it would open your mind a lot more when you understand the culture you're dealing with.
exactly. We saw a lot of that when I was doing counterterrorism work, and we were trying to understand. This was right after 9/11, the Al Qaeda, and they had a very different view, and they tended to be very, very concerned about, what we call the paranormal, and especially like psychic attacks and ghosts and demons and evil spirits. So
Right.
it forced us to start thinking how do other cultures see this, and then just being much more open to it.
And I gotta stop real quick and give Cole a shout out. So Cole, our co-host, is actually gone tonight. He had to do a DJ service for one of his family members' birthdays. So we miss you, Cole. All right. Now with counterintelligence, that brings up an interesting perspective. With counterintelligence or counterterrorism, do you know if we've ever used the knowledge of these paranormal fears against our enemy?
Actually, one of my graduate programs when I was doing some work, and that was one of my recommendations. But yes, what appears to be happening is after up until the 1990s, we ran our remote viewing and our psychic warfare program. It kind of after we won the Cold War, it kind of went away. After 2001, it we were entering a whole different enemy, and we didn't really understand it. And so, what it appears to happen, and again, this is more an educated speculation, was there became a lot more emphasis on understanding our enemies' perspective in the world, and this was part of my job when I was doing some CT work was how do they see the world and how do we exploit that? And, so this was very much about, and this all sort of kind of got rolled up into what we call the information warfare program. So the military runs information warfare. Part of it is about the hacking computer systems, things along those lines. But there's also a whole lot of aspects about understanding our enemies' psyche and their subconscious. And there's a strong, overlap with the whole concept of the paranormal and how they may view that. So it's not necessarily that we're actively exploiting it, but we're trying to understand it and put it into perspective. How do you use this perspective and then exploit it from an influence operation perspective?
And do you think with the remote viewing program they converted it over to psyops?
That's what seems to have happened. A lot of it is they've converted over. One of the areas that DARPA is doing a lot of work, the Defense Advanced Research Program, is they're doing a lot of work about integrating basically the mind and computers and how you can use a computer to enhance the capabilities of conscious and the subconscious. So the DARPA, like I said, they're releasing a number of projects to research this. So this seems to be where they're going, is using computer and technology to enhance existing capabilities.
And that makes sense. And I know DARPA's also been working on Harry Potter's invisibility cloak too.
Nice.
So Don, you got anything to interject here?
When you when you were talking about the Harry Potter thing, I was thinking about your question about the why soldiers and military people see more paranormal things. They have a creature called the Thestral that can only be seen by those who have been touched by death. Us being so close to death,
right,
might actually trigger something in our psyche to be able to be more aware of it.
And that's a good possibility. I think my only argument with that would be you're talking non-combat soldiers still experience paranormal.
True.
But it makes you wonder if there's a trigger in the brain that once you go to boot camp, you're basically broke down and reprogrammed. So I wonder if in that process it changes some kind of brain function to where you are more susceptible or more prone to paranormal. What do you think, Richard?
I think there's probably something to it. I like the word, the boot camp and military training does reprogram you, and it makes you think differently. You have to basically, you have to learn to live with reality as it comes to you, and versus living in your own little world where, here's how I see the world. So, when you're working with combat and, looking at, how do you fight a war, you have to be much more open-minded. And suddenly, the paranormal seems, in the past, maybe to a civilian, it seems like it doesn't make sense. But in the military, if you're out there, things that may not make sense, you become much more aware of and open to.
Hmm. And I think that, yeah, that makes total sense. Because, like I said, I was never into the paranormal as a child. It didn't interest me. I had experiences, but it was kind of like whatever. Uh, and that's pretty much how I looked at it. It was intriguing to say the least, but, because I saw a shadow at my cousin's house and had an experience with my cows where they were terrified of something I couldn't see. And they ran a whole half mile to a mile back to the barn, and I was weird. And I went back home and went back to TV. But I get to Stuttgart, Germany, and the whole gamut opened up, and there I was. In Bad Hersfeld is where I had the experience where I walked through a time warp and saw Hitler and his entourage in black and white. So, I had 3 UFO sightings in Germany alone. No, two UFO sightings in Germany alone at 2 different times, and then my third was in Iraq going over Syria. And talking UFOs, Vietnam. It, I don't know if does combat draw UFOs, and I would have to say yes to an extent. I think certain races like to watch the barbaric side of humanity. That would be my take on that. Because we've had cases throughout history where UFOs were seen over nuclear silos, and they actually shut the power down and disarmed the nuclear silos. So if we're seen as a threat to our own planet, they're going to get involved. So, Jamie, what do you think about all this?
I think a 40-pound robin is awfully fat.
Do what?
You caught me off guard there on that one, Eric.
Okay.
I actually, I hadn't given it a lot of thought. I'm sorry, I had somebody texting in a question on Bigfoot. So
yeah, I know you've got a bunch of questions from some of the locals about Bigfoot. Now we'll get to Bigfoot in the third hour.
Mm-hmm.
I want to focus. I want to keep focused on hauntings and the spirit side for the first hour, aliens and UFOs for the second hour, and we'll go. And we jump around on S4, so it's not that big of a deal. When I was at Fort Lewis, I lived in Old Hillside. So for any listeners that have been to Fort Lewis, I was on Old Hillside, and right around the corner from my house, actually in my backyard, was a completely taped off house, and nobody had lived there for 2 years because the sergeant that his family that had lived there, he had killed his wife and I believe his kids, and they investigated. And they locked the house down, and nobody moved in. They didn't clean up. They didn't do anything to that house. And to my knowledge, I think somebody's there now. But I haven't been to Fort Lewis in about a year because, it's just too far to go just for a visit. We don't go to Fort Lewis unless we have a reason to. But I found that intriguing. And it makes you wonder if they didn't open it up because it was still under a murder investigation. I don't think so. They didn't open it up because, well, it was a bloody mess for one. But why wouldn't they open it up? Were they scared of hauntings?
You mean they never have opened it up? You mean?
I think, like I said, I think it might be open now. But I mean, it was locked down for a good 3 to 4 years. before they even touched it.
Yeah.
So I was doing some research here, and in several different sites, they keep on mentioning Okinawa. Have you ever been to Okinawa, Rich?
No, have never been.
Because there's a base in Okinawa. I'm looking for the name of it. Yeah, Kadena Air Base.
Yeah,
And
Kadena,
Building 2283 on Kadena is a single family home for field grade officers, and it sits vacant. So there you go. Perfect example. You know, we've got the same thing that was going on at Fort Lewis, but they never opened up this house in Kadena because legend has it there's a spectral samurai warrior that occasionally rides through the house.
yep.
Other sightings have included a woman washing her hair in the sink, a curtain opening in front of a tour group, a phone ringing despite there not being a phone line connected to the house, and lights and faucets turning on by themselves. So residents of this house have reported blood stains on the carpet and curtains, an unearthly chill in one of the rooms, the room where a real teenage girl was stabbed to death by her stepfather. Another account alleges a Marine Corps officer bludgeoned his wife in the house. And what's interesting, which tells you it's also land-based, not just a building-based, but across the street, one is an Okinawan samurai warrior's tomb, but across the street is a daycare. Yeah, I wouldn't put a daycare center across the street from a violent death house. But across the street at this daycare has been reported these kids are throwing toys over the fence. And when these, you know, people ask these kids, why are you throwing toys over? They're throwing toys over the fence to the other kids on the other side. There's no kids there. So yeah, that's in Okinawa.
Well, it was interesting.
Say again?
Yeah, but with your story about the house was actually reminded me when I was in the military. I was staying off base in a house that had been previously occupied by a military person and his family. I think he had kind of had some mental health issues. He ended up burning down the house with his family in it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was pretty horrible. They rebuilt the house, and I was living in there. And at the time, I didn't believe in the paranormal, but it was like you could feel just how weird this was. And the lady who owned it, she was trying to sell it. But anybody who would buy it, they'd walk in and never. It was very clear that nobody would want to buy this. You couldn't do it. And we actually did an astral projection exercise to go to this house, with this, where the military guy had killed his family, and it was like we had to kind of pull back because the energy was just so negative. There was just such heaviness and nastiness about this house. So I don't know whatever happened to it, but you kind of wonder is, could the fact that as the guy, what I understand, has been there, like you said, it has been in the Vietnam War and has seen some combat, and maybe made him go over the edge and do this horrible thing. But just that energy there, and I wonder if there's other situations and other bases that might be very similar.
Well, and it makes you wonder if spirits are attracted to military personnel because of the violence we experience, which many of us get PTSD from this violence, and maybe they use that PTSD as an enhancement. Do you think?
Well, that's actually interesting. During my hypnotherapy training, one of the things that we were taught was that the possession and attachment tend to be very, very linked with, people who undergo high levels of stress. So, and this is when you're in the military, military people get very high levels of stress. We're trained to deal with it, but we also have to recognize that we're much more vulnerable to these problems. And at least in my experiences, a lot of times how these people in the military deal with stress, sometimes with drinking or, other things may make us vulnerable to attachments and entities that, may attract other attachments and entities.
And I'm not going to talk PTSD a whole lot tonight because that's part of next week's show. But I do want to say that with PTSD, that leads to heavy drinking, heavy drugs, and homelessness, which is why there's such a high population of homeless veterans. They have PTSD that's not diagnosed. But drinking heavy and being on drugs opens you up to spirit attachment and attack.
Absolutely.
So, there's a lot more paranormal issues going on than most people realize, just based on that. But it'll never be examined because, well, the paranormal doesn't exist by many people. So, let's see. Fort Leavenworth is supposed to be one of the most haunted military prisons.
My uncle was there. He did time.
Did you ever talk about spirits?
He was a very he was a I don't want to say troubled exactly, but something was different there after he was there.
Well, but in all fairness, prison is prison. Prison would change anybody, depending on how long they were there. I know, at Leavenworth, you have no rights. You can't salute. You can't honor the flag. You aren't even human if you're in Leavenworth. It's probably one of the harder prisons, in my opinion, anyway, because some people would say I can't remember the name of it, the prison in California that's supposed to be the hardest one.
Oh, put me down too.
San Quentin?
Huh?
Nothing.
Yeah, isn't it?
No.
Folsom Prison.
No.
Oh, that's right by my house.
Is it?
Yeah, it's really close to me.
I think that's supposed to be one of the hardest ones. Now, with Leavenworth, it has upward of 36 haunted buildings. One guardhouse, Tower 8 of the old disciplinary barracks, was torn down in 2004. It still stands. A soldier who committed suicide with a service shotgun inside Tower 8 will sometimes call the guard or control room, maybe for an aspirin. That's funny. Huh?
Did you say Ray Barracks?
Ray Barracks? No.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. I misheard you.
No biggie. No, it's Tower 8 of the old disciplinary barracks.
Okay.
My uncle killed himself that night.
So there was a prisoner uprising during World War II. Guards executed one of 14 prisoners every hour, but ran out of room on the gallows. So they used the elevator shaft in the administration building as an extension. That's kind of harsh. So now soldiers report hearing screams from the elevator when no one else is around. Now, when you look at haunting activity, I would have to say that's probably not intelligent. That's probably going to be Oh, I'm trying to think of the term for it.
Residual?
Residual. There you go. A residual haunting. I mean, it could be intelligent. There could be still spirits there. I'm pretty sure. But I'd say a lot
And
of that.
Eric,
Yeah.
when you were asking about my uncle's experiences at Leavenworth and stuff, it wasn't so much then, but later in his later years, he began drinking heavily and stuff, and he ended up taking his own life and stuff, and he was perfectly normal before that experience. And what he did time in Leavenworth for was him and his buddy. They were I don't remember what fort they were at, but they decided to go ahead and take a big old truck full of all these weapons and stuff on a joyride just to say they could and just like, you know, duck out for a while or something. And he did his time in Leavenworth, and then he got his undesirable discharge, and he was very troubled with drinking, drugs, and he did end up taking his own life, at the end of that too. So I don't know if that was from his time in Leavenworth or not, but he was not like that prior to it.
And it could be because I mean you're in a military prison. That's hard time. Hands down. So did he get an attachment? Did he get possessed? I'm not going to say yes or no. It's possible, especially if you had a personality change, but it's also possible you had a personality change from PTSD from being in prison.
Yeah, no telling on that, but it was very troubling. You know, he had a really hard time afterwards, and it was really sad.
I imagine. And very sorry to hear.
Thank you.
So, a haunted area called the Rookery. The building was once the base commander's quarters and was turned into family housing. So people still live there. So the Rookery is said to house a number of ghosts. The lady in white was supposedly tortured and killed by local tribes while the soldiers were off post. She screams and chases people she sees in the night. Also in the Rookery are Major Eben Ogden, who is presumably in command of all the ghosts in the building and died in 1855. There's a young girl named Rose, her nanny, and a young man called Robert. So Rose whistles around the house while Ogden seems to just walk around all day in spurred boots. So in the cavalry, which I would assume he probably was, having spurred boots. In the cav, do you ever get your spurs done?
No, we weren't attached to the cav unit when we were in Iraq, and then I didn't do the spur ride, so I never got my spurs.
So when I was in the Black Horse, I wasn't a sergeant. You had to be a sergeant or above to actually go on the spur ride. I believe. I believe specialists could, but yeah, that's right. I was only a private. I made PFC and I made specialist towards the end of my time with the Black Horse. So I never got to go on a cav ride. So for those that don't know what a cav ride is, that's basically 24 hours of pure hell. You go low crawling through mud pits. You have to do a whole lot of tasks, um, land nav courses. It's pure hell for 24 hours. And if you pass, you get to put spurs on your cav boots, on your combat boots. And most of our guys wore tinker boots with their Class A's. So you got to wear your spurs on them. And I think they're silver spurs. Gold spurs were for combat. So when we went to Iraq here the last time when we were in Talifar, I actually got gold spurs from Third Cav for supporting them, which was cool. And I got a cute little spur ride certificate. But I think the Cav ride or the spur ride was only for E5 and above, wasn't it?
I'm not sure. But I was a specialist when the second spur ride came around, and they offered it to me, so.
Okay, right.
I didn't take it because I was getting out.
Yeah, no.
But then again, it was also Germany, and they do it differently in Germany, I guess.
Yep. Absolutely. In Germany, it's a whole other world. For anyone that's going into the Army, if they even have German bases anymore, I'm not sure. I don't keep up on it. But try to get Germany. So, talking about Germany, that's a whole other world when it comes to paranormal. But what's cool about that is the German culture believes in the paranormal, whereas the American culture doesn't so much. So I've told this story before, but I had a very haunted apartment I lived in a little town called Dettelbach. Now that apartment, the pictures would move on their own. Uh, I heard giggling in the cellar, and what was interesting was there were hooks hanging from the ceiling. And according to one spirit that we actually talked to, it was a butcher 100 years prior that had owned the building, and he butchered kids. Which it makes sense if you hear a bunch of kids giggling in the cellar and there's nothing there. Um, but that was
That's
the
creepy.
yeah, that was the first time I've ever the door opened on its own. I actually had wind from nowhere that came down the hallway. It smelled like garbage. We had cold water that actually boiled. Uh, the final straw was when the knife flew across the kitchen and hit the wall. Jumped in the car and went to base. Stayed at one of our friends' houses on base, and went straight to housing. Told them, hey, we need to move. Need to move to housing, to base housing. And it's Germans that run housing in Germany, which is cool. The woman looked at us and asked, well, what's wrong? Why you got to move? And told her what happened, and she said, "Oh my God, you have a Geist. Yep, you must move now. You don't go back to your house." Like, cool. And I mean, we moved into base housing like within 2 days. And the only time we went back to that apartment was to get our shit. That was it. So, big difference between German culture and American culture. If you went to American housing, told them you had to move because you had a ghost, yeah, no, they would have laughed. They would have laughed you out of the office and said, "Suck it up, Buttercup." So yeah, no. Interesting
Well,
culture.
when you're talking over there in Germany and stuff, like over in the concentration camps and stuff, there must have been some pretty strange things going on from there, huh? Afterwards and stuff.
So yeah,
Like
Dachau is one of the biggest concentration camps, I believe. And people still hear the screams from the Jews from Dachau. And I've heard from a lot of people that visited that place that it's just the energy you feel there is nothing but negative, dark. It's always dark. Just yeah, if you're a sensitive or a psychic of any form, you wouldn't want to go there.
No.
And ironically, I don't have anything on Dachau, I don't think. So Bitburg Middle School is run by DoD. It was. I'm sure it's closed by now. But Bitburg was constructed at the Bitburg Air Base housing in 1956, supposedly on the site of a Nazi air base. It was consistently rated as one of the most haunted places in Germany. I doubt that. I really do.
Yeah.
They say it is tied with Dachau concentration camp. But you know what? There's so many haunted spots in Germany that, yeah, it'd be hard to rate any of them anyway. Lights constantly flash on and off throughout the night. Windows move on their own. And of course, people are heard screaming at the top of their lungs throughout the building. Only at night. Which I find interesting. Because, well, again, spirits are active 24/7. It doesn't matter. Most people do investigations at night because, well, spirits are only supposed to be active at night, when in reality you have spirits around you all the time. The main reason I see you doing investigations at night is because, one, it's quieter, your senses are heightened, your equipment's going to be more accurate because it's quieter, and so on and so forth. So, Richard, you're quiet over there.
Oh yeah, I'm just taking it all in. I'm learning a lot.
Now, getting a little more local. Well, not really, or not local, but more recent. But this isn't recent. But we've had reports from Afghanistan of current activity, as a matter of fact. But Helmand province in Afghanistan has a cursed Russian graveyard. So the 2-8 Marines in Helmand reported figures speaking Russian at Observation Point Rock. They found graves at the site, a place in Helmand considered cursed by the locals because of the unending amounts of bones that are constantly dug up there. So it became known as The Rock, and it was reported the site of Afghan I can never say this word, Mujahideen, executing Russian soldiers during the Russian occupation. Because of the bones and the strange sightings, it soon became known as the Haunted OP. So for our non-military listeners, an OP is an observation point. But it wasn't just the Marines seeing or hearing things. The UK's Welsh Guards, who came to the OP before the Marines did, also reported strange noises and unexplainable lights in their night vision. I like night vision. Night vision's great. It picks up all kinds of stuff you don't see with your normal eyes. So I'm moving along to Vietnam. Spring of 1993, a Vietnamese farmer was on his way to work his rice paddy, when he passed his wife and children in the road. Well, that would be normal, other than that his wife and children were dead. The wife sat on a rock and greeted him scornfully as his children cowered behind their mother. So the meeting shocked the farmer, as his wife and his 3 children were killed when their village was attacked in 1968 and his house was burned to the ground. And these are common in Vietnam. So apparently his wife's... Say again?
What I was going to suggest is that I think a lot of, like I said, in the culture, like the Asian culture, they're much more open to this. They, at least in my experience, the spirits and the ghosts, it's much more accepted within the culture, which makes it easier for them to believe and work with that situation.
Right, and it's sad that the American culture is so close-minded. Why do you think that is? When you're looking at cultures, why is the United States so close-minded when it comes to paranormal in general?
I think personally a lot of it is we have built this model of reality, and this is the important thing, is that we don't live within reality. We live within our perception of reality. And in the U.S., we build this perception of what we see as science. If you can't measure it, if you can't test it, it isn't real. And, so if you start seeing other things that don't fit that paradigm, you just ignore it. And so that's, it's out there. We're being we just decide it doesn't fit our perception of reality, and we are just going to ignore it or kind of write it off as, well, it's somebody's crazy, or it's just you invent some word that says we ignore this because it doesn't fit with the way we want to see the world. And I think other cultures like in Asia, they're much more holistic about it. They are willing to say, yes, we recognize that this is happening, and we can work with that.
And Nikki's got an excellent point. The American culture has been trained to be closed-minded by media and government. Don't question the government. The government knows, but they use the media to convince people that the paranormal is not real. I mean, look at UFOs. Until recently, all of a sudden now the Navy's coming out and saying, yep, we're investigating UFOs now. When we know they've been doing it the entire time. Look at Blue Book. They're slowly starting to feed through movies, TV shows, and media, and they have for a while with X-Files. But, is it because of the secrecy of the government? And yeah, I know, the stupid questions, Trip, but I have to ask them because I want, new listeners to hear our old viewpoints. We know the answers, and we've talked about them on the show before, but we have new listeners all the time. So we want to educate them now. So, with the intelligence you found, Richard, what's probably the most eye-opening you've seen?
I think from my perspective, what we see a lot of times is that the government recognizes, psychic phenomenon and paranormal is real at a certain level. But there's a lot of pressure on them not to publicly acknowledge it. We saw this with our psychic warfare program back in the 70s to the 90s. They ended up, it was actually fairly successful as an intelligence product, and it certainly was relatively cheap. So, it was very cost effective. But what they were doing is they were just getting a lot of pressure from everybody from, like I said, the skeptics saying you should not be looking into this because you know it's real regardless of what the evidence says, to perhaps some of the more religious people saying is, oh, psychic, that's Satanism and devils. So it just became a big PR issue. And I think, like I said, this is something that for me is, we always have to recognize that how we deal with, paranormal, psychic is, there's a lot of pressure to not acknowledge it. And the science is there if you look at it, but we're just constantly being pressured to ignore it, to explain it away. Even my work as a hypnotherapist, we start delving into that, but there's a lot of pressure, not to look too deep into non-scientific solutions. So for me, that's, I've been trained in the sciences, but it's been very hard to kind of untrain yourself and start acknowledging that science is not the solution to everything. It's a model of working with reality, and it's something I still struggle with.
Okay, and so Trip is in the chat room. He says somebody's got a smoke alarm that is beeping and is very loud. So going back to The Rock, and I don't think, no, I can't be, because there was a movie called The Rock, and it was based on biowarfare, nerve agent. But it came out years before they called this place The Rock. But a Lance Corporal had this to say about The Rock. This place really sucks. The Afghans say it's haunted. Stick a shovel in anywhere and you'll find bones and bits of pottery. This place should be a National Geographic. In the front, there are weird looking windows for shooting arrows. They say the Russians up here were executed by the Mujahideen. Has anyone ever been to Helmand province? You just went to Iraq, didn't you, Don?
I was there. The only time I was in Iraq was with you. So I never was able to get down there, into that area at least.
Yeah, that was in Afghanistan. And I never made it to Afghanistan. I went to Iraq the 2 times and almost got sent to Kosovo, but they asked if I wanted to go, and I said no because I'd already done Desert Storm in Somalia and didn't go. So they sent another mechanic instead. And that's a whole nother can of worms. Bosnia alone, just anytime you have a heavily violent war zone, such as Kosovo, Sarajevo, Bosnia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria now, it draws in a level of entities. Which I think, as we said towards the beginning, are drawn to soldiers. And then we bring them home. So the tunnel rat encounter, this one really caught my eye too. So tunnel rats in Vietnam were soldiers, they're usually smaller, so they could fit in the hidden tunnels that the Vietnamese built. And that's how they hid. If you've seen the movie The Soldiers, you saw the tunnels. So these tunnel rats were deployed and they crawled through. They found a room and there was a tarp. So they moved the tarp and their flashlights were fixed on 10 or so Vietnamese people dressed as VC, Viet Cong, but with blank faces looking into space. Their bodies were rocking back and forth, and their eyes were a solid color. The men waved their flashlights and weapons in their faces, but nothing stopped their rocking motion. Their now rusted weapons were in a pile in the corner. At the head of the room was a golden icon of a naked woman, except the lower half of her body featured 8 tentacles instead of human legs. The men were tempted to touch the icon, but instead decided to rig the entrance with C4 and bail as fast as possible. And then, of course, there's the story about the riverboat. There were 2 riverboats, actually. They both saw UFOs. One of them was seen blown up by the UFO by another riverboat. I'm looking for that report real quick. That one was kind of intriguing. And then, of course, we have the Battle of LA. And we're almost to the top of the hour already. So, how far from LA are you, Don?
From LA?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a good 8 hours drive if you drive the speed limit.
So, have you ever heard of the Battle of LA?
The Battle of LA? No, I have not.
So, in 42, there were lights in the sky out over the bay. To the extent that the air raid sirens went off and the military fired artillery at these lights, thinking they were UFOs. And once the smoke cleared, they were still there. And they actually made a movie out of it. I mean, obviously, it's Hollywood, so they glorified it. But if you look on History Channel, if you even Google the Battle of L.A. besides the movie, you're going to come up with a whole lot of information on it because it was well documented.
Now that you said something about it, I kind of remember something similar to that, like hearing about it.
Yeah, you got to look that one up. That one's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Cool story. Let's see here, and let's see. So on the 23rd, I'm still waiting to hear back from Josh. But the 23rd, we're actually going to have the band Crypt Amnesia on the show. And I'm looking forward to that show because if you're local, you can find Crypt Amnesia on YouTube. You can see their videos. They actually did one of their music videos here at Devil's Tower. I think it was like 2 years ago. You still here with us, Jamie?
I am.
You're quiet.
I'm just waiting.
You're usually full of questions.
No, you guys are actually explaining them quite well. Devil's Tower, you want to talk about though?
Yeah, Crypt Amnesia made a music video called Poltergeist.
Really?
Up
there?
At Devil's Tower.
Wow.
Really cool video.
Are they still kind of going with the whole haunted thing going on up there?
I don't think they're ever done with the haunted thing up there. So many people sit and think, oh, there's demons up there. Oh, it's very evil. No, it's really not. There's not demons up there. There's not. No. Don't get me talking about demons.
Actually, close to the demons that were up there, didn't we have some pretty nasty human people that were like congregating up there? I saw some kind of special on that not too long ago.
Oh, that's Adam Voffen. Yeah, that's Adam Voffen division. That's a terrorist cell. And yes, they were up there. I've been up there. I took pictures of their tag. So for locals that are listening, this isn't the terror show, but if you do see the numbers 1488, it is Adam Boffin Division. That is the sign that they're around. We'll talk about that tomorrow at the community meeting. So yes, if you're local listening, don't forget the community meet your neighbor meeting at the community center at 4 o'clock, 4 to 8. So on that note, we are going to take our first break tonight, and you can. I look forward, but we have two authors that we have to get in contact with that are going to be on the show talking about their books, because we do have InnerTraditions.com as a sponsor and Red Wheeler Weiser, both publishing companies, sending us books and authors to check out and interview on the show. So
nice.
Stay tuned. Next hour we'll be talking UFOs. See you then.
You are listening to S4 on Spreaker.com.
Forest Moon Paranormal is a non-for-profit emergency response team that handles all aspects of the paranormal, helping you, your family, friends, and community since 2004. Whether you're having a problem with hauntings, spirits, Bigfoot, other types of cryptids, or UFO activity. Maybe you're just unsure of what's bothering or terrifying you. Or maybe you're just afraid of criticism and disbelief. FMP is here for you. We handle cases globally and locally from our headquarters in Skagit County, Washington. We never accept any form of payment for our services and are 100% confidential. You can find us on Facebook under Forest Moon Paranormal. You can private message us for assistance or just come join in the discussion and become part of our growing FMP community.
Hey S4ians, please check out one of our newest sponsors, Wiser Books. They're an imprint of Red Wheel Wiser. They publish books across the entire spectrum of occult and esoteric subjects. Their mission is to publish quality books that will make a difference in people's lives without advocating any one particular path or field of study. They value the integrity, originality, and depth of knowledge of their authors. Please check them out at redwheelwiser.com.
We've had several days of 80-degree plus weather here in Concrete, Washington. My family's favorite way to keep cool in this heat is to stop by Java Zone 2 and grab a delicious iced latte for me and a blended mocha for my husband. Our son just loves their creamy milkshakes, and our daughter can't get enough of their ice cream. The best part is, Java Zone 2 is conveniently located just off Highway 20 beside Loggers Landing. And I'm proud to shop local for a business that has been a staple of the Concrete and Upriver community since it opened its doors in 2010. So if you're looking for a way to keep cool in this summer heat, come check out Java Zone 2. They're fast, friendly, and local.
All of us here at S4 and Forest Moon Paranormal would like to thank everyone who attended and supported our 2019 Paracon. It was an amazing event that we couldn't put on without our sponsors, our speakers, and our volunteers. Be sure to keep an eye on our Facebook group, Forest Moon Paranormal, for all your updates on Paracon 2020, September 26th, 2020. Thank you again to everyone. Well, hello there. Us here at S4 would like to remind you out there that the UFOI team weekly meetings are broadcast live on Facebook from Denny's, where America eats, each Monday night, 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at UFOI Team on Facebook. The UFOI team's gear, product store, and newsletter are located on their website at ufoiteam.com. To contact the UFOI team with your sightings report or a paranormal story, send an email to theufoiteam@gmail.com. Keep looking up and tell us your story.
Hey everyone, Cole here with S4 Paranormal Radio, the official voice of Forest Moon Paranormal. Looking for a way to get the word out there about your business, group, team, or product? Let us help you. A few clicks is all it takes to get started at s-4radio.com, or you can contact me at 360-999-2830. Welcome back to S4 with your host, Eric Cooper.
Welcome back to S4, the voice of the dark side of the paranormal and conspiratorial. Make sure you check our website, Spreaker site, and on the S4 YouTube channel for all the shows you've missed in the last 3 years. Anyway, back to the show. So, you know what? Are you guys ready for Thanksgiving?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yep.
Don?
It's but my waistline doesn't want it.
I don't blame her. I call it Turkey Day.
Mm-hmm.
And when isn't it?
Huh?
And when isn't it?
Well, you know, we didn't do turkey for the last couple of years. We're actually doing turkey this year, I think.
Oh, what did you do?
Ham?
Ham?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's interesting.
We wanted to be different.
I guess. Was it free range before it was dinner?
Probably.
You don't have any of those, right?
Probably not. Probably not.
No, I meant you don't have any little piglets running around over there, do you?
No.
You just have the chickens, right?
Yeah, now we just have chickens. We never got pigs. We thought about getting pigs for a while, but we never got pigs.
Oh, they're terrible. They root buildings under, and they're hard to catch.
Well, that's why you raise them for 6 months and you slaughter them.
My mom thought it would be a good idea to raise piglets one year, and to this day, the whole end of our barn is collapsing down, the cinder blocks, because they kept going digging underneath the dirt and everything, and they got underneath the foundation, and it put down the whole barn. It's not even structurally safe anymore because of piglets. That in the creek.
So here we go. So here's the story. Yeah, 1968. There was a crew of an American patrol boat that reported 2 glowing circular craft following them in the demilitarized zone that separated North and South Vietnam. The crew aboard a second patrol boat later reported seeing the UFOs over the first boat, and we just lost Skype. So give me a second, I'll get Skype back, and we will carry on. It never fails. You have to have at least one glitch in the middle of the show. So anyway, the crew of the second boat actually reported seeing the UFO over the first boat. They saw a flash of light followed by an explosion that completely destroyed the boat. And here we go. Let me try to get back in here. Because it's weird. It drops me, but it doesn't drop the rest of the crew. So, all right. Are we back?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it dropped me out of the Skype call. It's weird when it does that. All right. Richard, you still here?
There you go.
Still here.
Dawn?
Yep, still here.
All right. And yeah, it's unfortunate, folks. So Keith isn't with us tonight. I'm not sure where he's at. He's probably working, but he's usually on tonight talking UFOs with us. But anyway, so the crew aboard the second patrol boat reported seeing the UFOs over the first boat. They saw a flash of light followed by an explosion that completely destroyed the boat. And it's interesting, and that's really why the military, I think, got so interested in the UFO phenomena, because here you have something that's obviously not from this world and poses a national security threat. Would you agree on that one, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, that was, I think, what originally got the Air Force so interested in this. Like, they kept getting all these reports, and so they needed to go out and do an analysis. One, are they real? And two, what is the overall risk to the U.S. and our forces? So, and I think, they're continually, they don't want to believe in it, but they're still forced to deal with the reality of their own people observing them and the impact of them.
And, then you have to factor in the fear and terror and mass panic factor that if our military is not involved with or not in control of what's coming down here, are they really safe? Because everyone thinks, the military is what keeps you safe, but if there's something that the military can't handle, then you're not that safe.
Maintaining the perception of security.
Huh?
Maintaining the perception of security.
Right. In 1973, there was a press conference about the UFO encounters. I don't know whether this story has ever been told or not. They weren't called UFOs. They were called enemy helicopters. and they were only seen at night, and they were only seen in certain places. They were seen up around the DMZ in the early summer of '68, and this resulted in quite a little battle. And that came from the Air Force's position on UFOs. So when you look at that, how many stories in the media came up about enemy helicopters that were actually apparently code for UFOs? So then you've got World War II. World War II, you had the Foo Fighters. So who's heard of the Foo Fighters before?
I've heard of the band.
Panda. Oh. I thought I said panda. Kung Fu Panda.
Well, the Foo Fighters originally in World War II were plasma orbs that were seen following our aircraft by many pilots. In fact, it's kind of cool because I believe it was the first episode of Blue Book that they did last year that actually showed the Foo Fighter issues. I think that's the one. I know they brought up Foo Fighters in that TV show. So it's interesting because the Germans thought it was ours. We thought they were something from the Germans, but nobody laid claim that it was part of their technology. So they weren't our craft. They were UFOs. And why is it, Richard, that they've changed the name from UFOs to UAPs?
I think a lot of it is the typical government is they, like I said, UFOs have a very specific connotation to a lot of people, so it's just go rename it. That's pretty standard government speak is, oh, well, we don't like how this is being perceived, we'll go rename a program or a project or a threat to something else.
Yeah, they went from unidentified flying objects to unidentified aerial phenomena. So if you look at unidentified aerial phenomena, that makes it more obvious. It could be planetary, it could be meteorological. It's aerial phenomena. That doesn't necessarily insinuate something flying, does it?
Yeah, it's just very generic. So that's it. Like I said, if you can throw everything under there, giving it a very generic, safe-sounding name.
So, has anyone watched the TV show Hangar 1?
No, I have not.
Now, Hangar 1, I think you can still find on YouTube. I believe they dropped it. It was kind of cool. It was actually, and I'm not a MUFON advocate. I don't care for MUFON for my own reasons. But they took MUFON's files and made all these TV shows or episodes based on their files. So they're kind of cool. Probably one of the more accurate ones I would say that's out there as far as if you want a UFO TV show. Now that UFO Hunters is off the air, there has been for several years. I think UFO Hunters was one of the more accurate ones, which is why Bill Bird got threatened, or Bill Burns got threatened and shut down. But they did a series of episodes on Hangar 1 of military coming out and telling their stories. So there was a story of a retired Army sergeant who says he was assigned to a UFO crash and retrieval unit where both ships and ET bodies were supposedly recovered, some dead, some alive. I've heard that before. We all heard the Roswell story where they found some bodies that were dead and alive, and they kept the ones that were alive. And then there's the Korean War soldiers that claimed the UFO made them sick. This is an interesting story. So, in May of 1951, 1 year into the Korean War, PFC Francis P. Wall and his regiment found themselves stationed near Chorwon, about 60 miles north of Seoul. So they're preparing to bombard this village with artillery, and all of a sudden they see a strange light or a strange sight up in the hills, like a jack-o'-lantern wafting down across the mountain. So as they're about to attack this village, this pulsing attacking light debilitated them. So as they watch this craft make its way down into the village, the artillery air bursts started to explode, and they noticed this object would get right into the center of the airburst and would remain unharmed. So suddenly the object turned, and at first it was glowing orange, but then it started glowing, pulsating blue-green brilliant light. So he asked his commander for permission to fire at the object, which I think was probably one of the stupider things he could have done. And he fired at this object with armor-piercing bullets from an M1. That tells you right there it was pretty close. So as the bullets hit the body of this craft, they made a metallic ding, and then the object started behaving more erratically, shunting from side to side as its lights flashed on and off. And then they were attacked. Well, of course they were. So it swept them by some form of a ray that was emitted in pulses. And so they remember a burning, tingling sensation that swept over their body as if they were being penetrated. They rushed into underground bunkers and peeped through the windows as the craft hovered above them. And then it shot off at a 45-degree angle. So, supposedly, according to this report, 3 days after the incident, the entire company of men was evacuated by ambulance with special roads cut to haul out those too weak to walk. When they finally received medical attention, they were found to have a dysentery and an extremely high white blood cell count. So basically, again, yeah, it sounded like effects of radiation. And according to that report, that was one reason that napalm and Agent Orange was created. Not necessarily believing that part of it. So, Don, have you ever seen a UFO?
Yeah, what's up? Not that I'm sure I have, because I look at the skies a lot, but it's like I rationalize things a little bit more. I try to not overthink that I'm seeing something, but there have been a couple of times where I was like, that's kind of weird. Nothing like what you see on the TV, at least.
Oh, no, not at all. Let's see, the first UFO I saw, again, I was in Germany. I had to take a soldier to Mannheim prison, which was like 4 or 5 hours from Illesheim. I think I was in Illesheim. Yeah. So we go, and it took like 3 hours to drop the soldier off because we had to actually inventory every piece of clothing, every article that he had in his bags. So we inventory all his stuff. We get him into the prison, and we're heading back. It was like between 11:30 and midnight, and we're about to Kitzingen. And I look out over the city of Kitzingen, and there's a bright orange orb just hovering there. And it's weird because I'm thinking, wow, the moon's orange. And then it dawns on me, no, the moon is full, but it's over to the right, on the other side of the Audubon. So if the moon is over here and it's full and it's normal, what the hell is this orange light hovering over the city? And, I kind of was talking about this with the driver, and what is that? And I have no idea. I've been watching that too for about 2 minutes. And, it was weird because we watched it for about 5 minutes. And it was just like somebody flipped the light switch. It was gone. It didn't shoot up. It didn't, move anywhere. It was just gone. What does that? It wasn't a searchlight. There was, searchlight you can see, because this was my first UFO encounter. So I'm thinking of everything possible this thing could be besides, a UFO. Seriously. So my second encounter was about 2 years later, and I was out on again. I think I was in Bad Vinsheim, and there was a star. It looked like a star, at least. It was pulsating. And so I went back in, and I just had this urge to shine a flashlight at it. I don't know why. Just one of those things. So I flashed a flashlight at it, and it shot down from its position as a star to, I don't know, what's the elevation of a normal airliner? What, 500 feet? Anybody?
I have no idea.
32,000?
An airliner, like a...
Anyway, it hovered about the height of your normal airplane. And it hovered there. And, I don't remember any communication. I don't remember if it told me anything. I don't remember anything really. Other than that, this star shot down to airplane level and hovered there for like 5 minutes. And then it shot back up into its star position. So technically you would call that a CE5, or a close encounter of the fifth kind, because it was initiated by me shining a flashlight at it. And then, of course, my third encounter was in Iraq going over Syria, and it was triangular shaped. Had green, blue, and red lights. Moved very slow. Was witnessed by, Desert Moon Grove. I don't think you were there then, though, Don. I think you'd already gone back home.
Yeah, I think that was probably, yeah.
But it was witnessed by an aircraft mechanic and an aircraft crew chief, both of whom looked at me and said, "What the hell is that?" So when you have, personnel that actually know aircraft quite well, you can take it to the bank that they would know if that was one of ours. So I'm not saying it was an alien craft. What I am saying is it was an unknown. It could have been government experimental. We know it wasn't a drone. We know it didn't make any noise. Moved very slow. And had a pattern to it. And had a light signature that, wasn't a normal mundane craft. Okay, thank you, Nikki. So Nikki's in the chat room. She says normal passenger airliner is 31 to 38,000 feet, according to Google. And I think it was
and
lower
according
than
to Jamie, 32.
This one was normal. It was much, much lower than that one, because it got quite big when it came down. So, Jamie.
Yeah.
What kind of UFOs have you seen?
Well, up on Haystack, right behind your place. We were riding quads one night, and it was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and we were up on the top ridge, and we were just, maybe going, I don't know, maybe 5, 10 miles an hour, just kind of tooling along, and we noticed up above us, it was like really close down, and like I told you before, it was like almost like a light flame. It was, light colored. It wasn't like yellow or orange, but it really wasn't defined on, the shape or anything. And it was kind of like hovering and stuff. And we kind of were laughing, going, whoa, look at that. And we'd speed up and, well, it was speeding up and stuff. And it didn't take too much more of that. And we were scared to death. And we took off just flying down the hill. And there was no doubt in our mind that there was one up there above us, and there's one every year, every summer. They're behind us every summer without fail.
And so the only thing I can think is potentially a planet. But a planet would be obvious.
Oh, that's too close, I would think.
Well, you also said it moved on its own, right?
Oh, well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, planets don't move on their own, so yeah, that kind of
Well,
rules that one out.
You scared me on that one because we were that high up.
Now, there's one spot on Haystack that, and I've told you this before, and I've talked about it on the show before, but there's a valley on the left side, just past the first culvert where the creek crosses the road. And, Cheyenne and I were up there, oh God, this was 2 years ago now. And the noise we heard, I mean, she looked at me and was like, Daddy, what the heck is that? And it sounded like a helicopter hovering right over us. And it sounded like the metallic downdraft. If you've ever been underneath a helicopter, as it's beating.
It sounds like it's
when they do the reverse thrust.
Yeah.
So, what was it? I have no clue. I know nothing in nature that makes that kind of noise.
But then it goes dead silent, and there's no noise at all.
Yeah, there's no birds. There's no. I mean,
nothing.
Hands down, there's something on that mountain. But you could take that a step further and say there's something in the mountains of the Cascades. Period. Because going by the reports you read, going by the experiences people have all over our community in these mountains. I mean, South Skagit Highway alone.
And remember when we sat there in your living room with Kayla and Cole and Izzy, and we were talking about how we're tying the Baker Lake Highway into behind the house and all the same family and the black helicopters and stuff, and how they all kind of tied in together with the real strange occurrences and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of weird
There's
stuff.
Something up there.
And I don't know if it's seasonal. Because you say it comes during the summer.
Well, it might come, during the winter too, when it's cloudy and I can't see it, and I'm in bed because it's too cold outside. But I'm out summer. We ride late into the night and stuff all the time, and so we're out more often. It's warmer, and that could be it too.
Absolutely. It tells you aliens don't like the winter either. But right now it's clear, it's cold, but the stars are bright. And like Nikki was saying earlier in the chat room too, night vision goggles will be perfect for sky. They are perfect for sky watching because you pick up lights in the sky that you wouldn't see with the naked eye, moving on their own. Some of them are space stations. I get that. Or the space station.
I think it's not just either haystack too. It is Finney, from Finney, Cumberland, Upper Finney, Lower Finney, Haystack, that whole area. There's some real strange sightings and sounds, and from Bigfoot to the lights and everything else.
And so, what's the draw? We have a lot of minerals in these mountains. We have the mercury mines. We have gold mines. Do we have silver up here?
Not a lot of it, but up at the paint mines that we were talking about is where I was telling somebody tonight that there's like a 2-foot wide section of some kind of silica or quartz or something that divides the whole top of that rock in half, and we couldn't chip at it with any kind of rock picks, nothing. It's just full of rock, minerals and everything up there. It's magical up there. It really is.
Yeah, and Nikki's saying if you're talking about Baker, Mount Baker is a whole nother. That's a whole other topic. Because so we have Karen Panova that lives on the other side of us from Baker, up in Glacier, and she has experiences up there nonstop. So UFO team goes up there all the time and does sky watching. But she says there's a base up on the mountain. She saw it being built via a psychic premonition, among a number of other things in that intense premonition. And Nikki, you need to write a book.
Eric,
What?
when you just mentioned about the lights and stuff maybe year round. I just got a post from Tim Brumley an hour ago, and he's a local guy. He lives down there in Cedar Woolley at this point in time, and it says, for the past 5 years or so, I've been seeing UFOs. I can look up on any clear night, any time of the year in the wee hours, and more times than not, I can spot one. And just the other night, I've seen the biggest one yet. I've talked to others that have seen them too. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, when are we going to get the truth? Something big must be going on for me to have so many sightings. Are they ours? Or why are there so many sightings now? The way they move makes no sense. I would like to hear some others' thoughts on this.
Okay, so Skagit County is the number one county in Washington State for UFO reports. I'll tell you that right now. So why? I'll throw some theories out there. We have 2 volcanoes right in our area, Glacier Peak and Mount Baker. So some of these craft are fueled by geothermal energy. That's why if you look at UFO reports, a lot of UFO activity is centered around volcanoes. 2, there's a lot of races that are coming here to watch, because according to Keith, which he's not on tonight, but going by Keith, there's a lot of races. Right now is a very pivotal time in human history. You have no doubt. You look at the United States right now; it's so divided. There's so much hate, so much tension. It's about to either make or break the human race. So a lot of races are actually just watching to see what we do. They will not intervene. They can't. They're bound by their own codes and their own laws. You have what's called the consortium, and that's essentially a council of hundreds of races that monitor the human race. They want us to improve. They don't want us to be barbaric. They don't want us to be, so warlike. That's part of our human nature, though. So, if we can come upon a resolution to where we can stop the fighting, stop the violence, stop the aggression, we can basically join the consortium and be a part of galactic races, essentially. They don't care about the human race. They care about the planet. The planet's full of minerals that they want. Can they come down and just take it? Sure they could. But that's not what they're about. We're another race that they want to be essentially a brotherhood, sisterhood of. Call it crazy, but do you have a better theory? But it's interesting. Um, and I would agree with them. Yes, you could, if you had the right equipment, whether it's night vision. Some people are just so in tune they're able to see them without equipment. It's all everyone's individual. So what's your thoughts, Don?
I'm just thinking we're just one giant zoo. And, it's kind of like they come to see what the animals are doing. You know what I'm saying? It's just they abduct to study, and then that's about it.
Yeah, I can see it now. Lock the doors, gurgle, because we're gonna go by Earth now. Um,
Yeah.
okay, yep, yeah, sure. And I agree, Nikki. Nikki says they are taking minerals. That much I know. And you look at Cumberland, for example. We know we've got. You can go on Google and look up mines, and it shows you all the claims based on mountain. So we know there's mercury mines up there. We know there's gold mines up there. And like you said, Jamie, there's a lot of UFO activity up there. And then you come to the big question a lot of people have: is Bigfoot related to the UFOs? So, with Bigfoot, and we'll get to Bigfoot in the last hour a lot more in depth, but with Bigfoot, you've got two sides of that coin. You've got the stories I've heard about witnesses that saw a landed aircraft or landed UFO in the woods. Door opens, Bigfoot comes out, picks up some water samples, soil samples, gets back in the craft, takes off. You got the flip side of that, where people have seen a UFO and they'll have Bigfoot running, terrified. So I've said this on the show before too, but if they're abducting humans, why wouldn't they abduct Bigfoot as well if they're doing DNA samples? And I found it intriguing, but I believe it was this year that I actually started hearing more and more reports of the aggressive Bigfoot. And anyone that's been in the Bigfoot field knows that the Pacific Northwest Bigfoot, for the most part, just keeps to himself, herself, because we know there's family units here. They don't attack humans. They don't eat humans. They just want to be left alone. But this is the year that I actually started hearing more and more encounters of an aggressive or violent UFO experience where they're taking humans, where they're killing humans. And again, going by Keith, there is an alien race that looks very Bigfoot-like, but they're shorter. These are the 5 to 6 foot race. Still look very, primate, look very much Bigfoot. And I'm trying to remember the name of them, but they don't come from here. They come from off-world. And in these encounters, you will find the ball of light. You can actually go on YouTube and you'll find, you look for keyword violent Bigfoot encounters, Washington State. And I know there's one video in particular that has a story from Darrington. It's either Arlington or Darrington, of 2 boys that were chased by Bigfoot. There's another story. They never actually got into where these women were from, but they're from the Northwest Washington here. And the third one is the one that really caught my attention, and that was from a psychiatrist psychologist who retired, didn't believe in Bigfoot at all until they got chased by one. And then he got more involved with the whole Bigfoot spectrum because you got chased by one. Naturally, it's gonna change your whole tune. And they went up, him and his wife and one other guy, and they just sat in the pitch black in the middle of the woods. And none of them had their flashlight on, but there's a really bright light shining from behind them. And they turned around and looked, and it was an orb. And they watched it for about 2 minutes, and it shot straight up and split off into 3 pieces. And then they sensed that they're surrounded by these Awara. That's it. It's called the Awara. And you will find it in Keith's book, Races of the World. And if you look up R. Keith Andrews, you can actually contact him directly and request his book. He just wrote it this year. Great book. And you can read it later if you want, Jamie.
Okay.
I'm losing my voice here. But we'll get into a lot more of your Bigfoot questions here, third hour. And so I completely agree with Nikki. Nikki says they protect us. I've always seen Bigfoot as more of a guardian. Not like Faye. Not like, they're not Giganteus Pithecus. Again, this is my opinion. There's no scientific basis for anything. But until we actually, one comes up and says, "Hey, take my blood, take a stool sample, whatever," they're not going to actually, they're not going to actually ever get proof of what he is. But going by Native American lore, I would have to agree with Nikki. He is an interdimensional being, which is why he disappears the way he does. You can go to Lake Tide during the winter and find tracks all over. They go into the middle of a field and disappear. So, the skeptics will say, well, it's easy for him to climb a tree. Yeah, but I'm talking he goes in the middle of a field and he disappears. There's no tree. Where'd he go? A helicopter pick him up? I don't think so. So, Guardian, yes. I don't think it's so much logging that pisses him off. I believe he's territorial. If you're in his territory, then yeah, he's going to toss a rock at you. Or a log. There's a case in Darrington where the folks got chased out of the woods. They were driving down Mountain Loop in their car, and a log went through their window. It didn't fall. It got thrown like a spear. And it was a log. So that kind of tells you, how strong they are. So, Jamie, have you ever had a Bigfoot encounter?
I have not, except for the Bigfoot sounds that I have heard, the knocking, and I've heard a lot of whales, wailing noises.
Mm-hmm.
But I have never seen one.
And was that in the woods behind your house?
Yes, and up on Cumberland.
Okay.
Paint mine.
Okay. Yeah. Now, behind the house, yeah, I have no doubt. They're all around us here.
The one that your father-in-law saw, when you first were telling me that story, I was able to tell you the exact pattern he was hopping, because that guy that worked in the woods like 15 years prior to that saw the exact same movement the way he came down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it ran through blackberries, and if you've seen the blackberries behind our house, they are too thick for, and bears don't walk on 2 legs. They do for short distance. But
It was the leaps and the bounds.
I've never known of a bear to run on 2 legs. Now, some hunters might argue and say yes, they can, and I have no doubt they can. But this thing sprinted and ran through the blackberry, bushes, grabbed a rooster, and ran back through the blackberry bushes. Gone. I was able to follow the feathers, but I never found a body. So are they carnivores? I honestly believe they're omnivores, which means they'll eat, berries, fruit, and they're just not meat eaters alone. Robert. So we got Robert White in the chat room. Great to see you. And yeah, no need to see to believe. A lot of people are like that. There's no such thing as Bigfoot, but I'll believe in the spirit, or vice versa. There's no such thing as spirits, but have you seen an alien lately? When you're talking the whole spectrum of the paranormal, why can't one exist if the other one does? Yeah, I've been doing good, Robert, and good to see you in the chat room. I haven't seen you in a year, so how's he land? So Robert's one of our he's one of our regulars in the chat room. He's in Australia. Always great to see our Australians joining us. It's tomorrow in their world. And again, folks, I'm kind of killing time because I don't want to jump into Bigfoot until the third hour, and we have about 10 minutes, and then you get to hear Cryptamnesia with Poltergeist for our last break. But don't forget to set your clocks back. It is daylight savings. So, in the Concrete and Upriver group, they were arguing about daylight savings. And supposedly in Washington State, they're going to allow us to vote to get rid of daylight savings. So what's your opinion of that? Richard?
Does it
Well, I guess the one concern I have is how does that make its effect with other states, nearby states, Oregon and California? Will we be out of sync? I know Arizona doesn't have daylight savings, in my day job, we work a lot with people from all across the country and even the world. So understanding what time it is very, very critical. So I'm trying to understand what the problem is they're trying to solve.
And I agree. It'd be nice if everybody was on the same page. The original, as I recall, the original reason to have daylight savings was so the farmers had more light for the crops. Is that right? If I remember in history,
that sounds about right.
They made daylight savings so that the farmers had more daylight to do their work. So they had more daylight. Say again?
I would like it if it was daylight past 3 p.m. once in a while. It gets so dark.
Yeah, it's about to get darker because of daylight savings. The kids go to school in the dark. They come home in the dark. They don't get to play in the light other than recess at school. Unless they get a snow day. So
get rid of it.
I don't see a reason to have it. It's really frustrating for me because, growing up, Skagit County was full of dairy farms. It was full of, agriculture, strawberry fields, bulb fields. I mean, we still got Rosengard. We still got, Washington Bulb Company. But this whole county was flourishing with farms and agriculture. And look around you now. There's no reason to have daylight savings now because the farms have diminished. It's not like the old days. Not to mention, in the old days when they came out with daylight savings, they didn't have the technology we have today. They were out there cutting grass with a sigh. It took a lot longer. So, what's your thoughts, Don?
I'm kind of indifferent on it because it doesn't really affect me a whole hell of a lot. I mean, we're surrounded by farmland, but I live in the middle of the city of Sacramento, so it's kind of like, if we're gonna do it for one state, we might as well do it for the rest of the 50. Because, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Do other countries have the same daylight savings time, or is it just us?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think Germany, because that's the main one I can base it off. I don't think Iraq had daylight savings at all. Middle East didn't. I don't believe Europe did either. I think that's just an American thing, essentially.
Yeah.
Go figure.
Say again?
I said, go figure.
Yeah, it was more the United States and I believe Canada, so it was essentially the northern hemisphere.
Cole's fault.
So yeah, I'm all for getting rid of it.
Well, who do we take that up with?
Well, there's supposed to be a vote on it coming up.
Really?
Yeah.
We could vote that way? Really? That's cool.
It's that easy.
Well, I say we go bigger than that then.
I think the entire country should be on one time zone.
Absolutely.
I mean, why can't it be, 12:52 here and in New York?
There we go.
Oh. Alrighty. So in the last hour tonight, we're going to talk Bigfoot. In 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted. And I remember as a child, I was sitting in church in Cedar Woolley, Washington, and the windows shook. And we got home in time to find out Mount St. Helens had erupted. And we didn't, I don't think, we didn't get much ash here, did we, Jamie?
No, we actually didn't. We heard it. We heard it loud as could be, but we really did not get much ash at all.
No, the wind currents picked it up. It dumped heavily in eastern Washington, and Idaho, and I think Montana, and a few other states got it. But we didn't get any ash here in Skagit County. Now, with that story, it all of a sudden comes out that several Bigfoot were injured. And they called in the National Guard. The National Guard went and recovered 2 still alive, and I think 3 deceased Bigfoot. Now, it's hard to find anybody to verify or back that story up because they want to stay quiet. But we're going to get to that a little bit more here in the last hour. And then we'll wrap it up with some more military stuff. And again, next week, don't forget our Veterans Show. We're going to talk PTSD. We'll probably sit and tell some war stories. How do we feel about Veterans Day as veterans? Things like that. We always make this. It's usually a really intense show. I'll warn you now. I'm trying to find some special guests to come on. So if you're a veteran and you want to be on the show next week, get a hold of me. But anyway, let's listen to some Cryptomnesia and we'll be right back.
You are listening to S4 on Spreaker.com.
They say I'm evil, they say I'm dead inside. Check out my ego, 'cause I'm right. watch as I catch fire, but I cannot die. I am your poltergeist. I must have 1,000 souls trapped inside. 1,000 souls that are haunting in my eye. You keep trying to kill me, but I cannot die. You try to ignore me, but I haunt you deep inside. You keep trying to kill me, but I cannot die. You try to ignore me, but I haunt you deep inside. They say I'm evil, they say I'm dead inside. Check out my ego, 'cause I brought it here tonight. Just burn me like a witch, and watch as I catch fire. But I cannot die. I am your poltergeist, poltergeist, poltergeist. Poltergeist, poltergeist. Poltergeist, poltergeist. Poltergeist, poltergeist. I'll eat your dreams while you immerse in all of your hate. Just waste away like you're destined by your fate. I'll be alive but I'm dead to watch you die. So go ahead and take my life, I dare you to try it. You keep trying to kill me, but I cannot die. You try to ignore me, but I haunt you deep inside. You keep trying to kill me, but I cannot die. You try to ignore me, but I haunt you deep inside. They say I'm evil, they say I'm dead inside. Check out my ego, 'cause I brought it here tonight. Just burn me like a witch, and watch as I catch fire, but I cannot die. I am your poltergeist, poltergeist, poltergeist. Poltergeist, poltergeist. Oh, poltergeist, poltergeist. Poltergeist, poltergeist. Oh, you're caving in, the loss of sleep keeps you obsessing on your pride. But in the end, you let me in. They say I'm evil, they say I'm dead inside. Check out my ego, 'cause I'm running here tonight. Just burn me like a witch, and watch as I catch fire, but I cannot die. I am your motherfucker. They say I'm evil, they say I'm dead inside. Check out my ego, 'cause I brought it here tonight. Just burn me like a witch, and watch as I catch fire, but I cannot die. I am your poltergeist, poltergeist, poltergeist. Poltergeist, poltergeist. Oh, poltergeist, poltergeist. Poltergeist, poltergeist.
Welcome back to S4 with your host, Eric Cooper.
Welcome back to S4, the voice of the dark side of the paranormal and conspiratorial. Yes, we do talk about conspiracies every once in a rare while, but we know most of our listeners love to hear about UFOs and aliens most of the time. So make sure you check out our website, www.s-4radio.com. And if you want to be a sponsor, by all means, get a hold of us. Check out our Patreon. And we have 3 sponsors, actually. Java Zone 2 here in Concrete. Red Wheeler Weiser Books Publishing Company. And Inner Traditions Publishing Company. So we'll be getting some special guests here probably the next month or 2. They send us books. We review them or read them. And then the author actually gets a hold of us and wants to come on the show and be interviewed. Get more publicity and get more information out there. So, what I'm going to do is read this letter off this website. It's supposed to have come from a National Guardsman that was called into Mount St. Helens to help recover Bigfoot bodies. So he says, Dear Sean, I was reading some of the stories about Mount St. Helens on the message boards and wanted to share this one. I only ask that you withhold my name. See, and why? I mean, I get privacy. That's fine. But if we want to validate a story, it'd be great to know who we're, do some background on this person. But we can't. We don't know who he is. So I was a National Guardsman at the Mount St. Helens site. And this is the first time I've ever spoken about what I saw firsthand. I lived in Spokane, Washington, and was 24 at the time this all took place. I've read some of the other stories, and they only tell part of the story. I was placed on a special cleanup crew farther up the mountain. A large tent was set up, and it was to be guarded by armed soldiers who were not part of the guard. And that happens. In Iraq we had Blackwater, we had Special Forces, you've got Delta Force. So you never know.
No.
So that part I could probably say probably happened if they were part of the government and it was a Bigfoot deal. But why are they hiding Bigfoot? There's no real reason. But there is. And we'll get into that a little bit in this third hour. So there were numerous soldiers on the scene that were not members of the guard. We were given a briefing by a soldier who said that, quote, after he spoke to us, we would forget about him and what he said at the end of the mission, unquote. Men in Black comes to mind. The atomizer.
Yeah.
This was strange as we never dealt with anything before. Myself and 4 other guardsmen were told to follow a group of soldiers and not to speak to each other and to remain very quiet overall. We were told to get into a Jeep and wait. Don?
Yeah, what's up?
Do you ever remember a Jeep in the Army?
No, we had just Humvees. I wasn't in the Army at that point.
Oh, wait. This is 1980, National Guard. They probably still had Jeeps. Never mind.
Yeah, and 5 years later I was born, so.
Right. Yeah, they might have still
Eric,
had Jeeps in 1980. Huh?
I found a reference about the Bigfoot removing their own bodies too.
Okay.
It was from the National Guardsman. It was it said the report was made in 2012, and he claimed that he was on site when recovery took place, and added that not all the Bigfoot creatures were dead at the time. Some were burned and injured. Dubiously, another claim maintained that some of the Bigfoot creatures helped recover their dead and wounded to the Army chopper.
Okay, let me finish the letter, and it might actually be the same guy. We'll see. Let's see. Yeah. Myself and 4 of the guardsmen were told to follow a group of soldiers and not to speak to each other and to remain very quiet overall. We were told to get into a Jeep and wait. We sat in the Jeep for maybe a half hour. Eventually another Jeep arrived carrying a civilian and another member of the military. The civilian was brought into the tent and he emerged a few minutes later followed by a large hairy creature. It looked like a large man covered in fur, and the best way to describe it was like Beast from X-Men, only brown. Huh. The creature looked to have some burns and had a bandage on its arm. At first we were afraid, but when it walked by we could see its eyes and it just looked very sad and somber. It climbed into the back of a pickup with a civilian, and the two were speaking in a weird language I'd never heard. It would cough at times. We followed the truck to different areas. There were 5 total stops. Each time we stopped, we were told to follow the civilian and the creature. Each time we followed them to rocky areas where there were caves, the creature would make a sound and then listen. At the first area he made a sound and we all just waited in silence. After a few minutes, the creature looked at the civilian and then at the ground. The civilian at one point touched his shoulder and called for a canteen to give the creature a drink. The same thing happened at the next area, but this time there was a response to the sound. After a few minutes, 2 soldiers emerged from the cave carrying a badly burned creature, just like the one with the civilian. The creature bent down next to it and looked it over for about 5 minutes. It then spoke softly with the civilian. It turned and walked back to the truck, and we were told to follow. As we were walking away, we heard a shot, and we knew it was one of the soldiers putting the creature out of its misery.
Aww.
There was no response at the 3rd or 4th site, but at the 5th, there was another return sound to the creature. This time it was different, and soldiers carried out a creature with a badly burned left leg. We were then ordered to all help get a very large stretcher from the truck and to help place the creature on it and carry it back to the truck. We then immediately returned to the base camp. The creature was carried into the tent while the other creature and the civilian spoke. We were ordered to stay in the Jeep until we were to be debriefed. As the creature turned to walk into the tent, it looked at us and made a waving gesture with its hand. We took it as a thank you for what we had done. By the time we were ordered out of the Jeep, we were all in shock. We were called over to an area to be debriefed, and it was just strange. I'll never forget what was said because it was just not what we expected. I thought I would hear, "You took an oath, and now you need to live up to it for your country," with a threat also implied. A different high-ranking soldier just said, "Look, do y'all really want an explanation? You saw what we were doing. These creatures live in these areas. They mean no harm and want to be left alone. Do you really want to do anything that may cause them trouble? They are like us in a lot of ways. If you need or want to talk about this, just wait about 30 years. By that time, there will likely be no reason to keep them a secret." We were then ordered back to the guard camp because they were breaking it up so nobody saw too much and knew everything that happened. We did not speak of it, and after a few months, I just took the attitude that these things live out there, and honestly, my life is no different because of it. I only bring it up now because people have been writing a lot about Mount St. Helens, and I believe the whole story should be told. I will also say this. I like to camp and hike, and have done so many times throughout the Northwest. Every time I look for signs of these creatures, tracks, listen for sounds, I never saw or heard anything other than what I did that day on Mount St. Helens. Well, he ain't looking very hard, is he? They're all over up here. So I wonder, did they migrate from Mount St. Helens? What do you guys think?
I think they've been around here for quite a bit longer than that.
And I would agree. You know, there was a story about a Bigfoot that raised a child from the Jerrington tribe. Or the Soxhuatl tribe, rather.
I could not get confirmation on that.
No. And we probably won't, you know, and I really don't need confirmation. It's just, it is what it is. I know Bigfoot exists. I've heard the knocks. I've seen the tracks. You've heard the knocks. And it's interesting
Absolutely.
because, Markham, our scientist, heard his first knocks up here. And he looked at me and he said, "Oh my God, is that what I think it was?" And I said, "Yep." I mean, and he's from North Carolina. They've got Bigfoot in North Carolina as well. They're just called different. So, what are some of the questions that you said you were getting, Jamie?
Okay. All right. Let's see. We got the first one is from Bill in Rockport, and he wants to know why no remains have ever been found anywhere in the world.
Okay. So again, there's no proof. I'm going to say that right up front. What we talk about in S4, anybody can research. It's all our own personal opinions and theories based on our own experience and our own research. So I want to throw that disclaimer out there right now. I don't know the proper answer for that. I'll tell you what I think, though. It kind of goes back to if you look at wildlife, look at elephants. Elephants have their own burial ground. So would it be too shocking to find out that maybe Bigfoot's got their own burial ground that we just haven't found? There are places on this planet that have never seen a human foot. That's one thought. Personally, I still go with the interdimensional theory. If they're interdimensional, they could very easily take their dead into another plane if you follow the interdimensional theory. And that's why we haven't found, you've got the skeptics out there that'll say, "Well, I've been all over these mountains hunting. Do you ever find a bear body? Do you ever find a deer body? Do you ever find a coyote body?" Actually, I have. But, you know, bodies degrade. They turn back to the earth. So, but yes, you do find animal bodies occasionally. Just not Bigfoot.
Okay, now I have an interesting one from Caleb Hooper here in Concrete. He's right down the road from us on Slowback Lane. And several years ago, he was up at the Watson Anderson Trailhead, and he said that he could hear wails, soulful wails between two creatures, distances apart, with the strangest tapping in between. And he said that those noises, he's been in the woods his whole life and everything, and those noises are unlike anything he has ever heard. And does that sound like it was Bigfoot to you?
Okay. Possibly, yeah. I've never heard, personally, all I've heard was the knocks. I've never heard the wailing they talk about. I've had a lot of people talk about the primate sounds, the wailing noises they make. But I'll say this, a while back there was a video that went around Facebook from Canada. Not the recent one. I couldn't tell you what that recent one was. There's also a recent one, but there was another one that made a very weird, various pitched noise. Now, coyotes make the same noise. Now, Jamie, I know you've heard the coyote pups in the field.
Oh my gosh.
They make a very strange sound, don't they? They don't sound like dogs.
Oh my goodness.
So, I mean, honestly, if somebody could get a great audio recording of what they're hearing and I could analyze it, would help me a lot.
Okay.
I could get it to Josh, who's our media analyst, and he could pick it apart.
And that's the one thing I've never heard those soulful wails that I've heard others refer to either. So
I think it's a language. I really do. I think tone, and it's gonna sound weird, but I mean, hell, anything Bigfoot is weird anyway. But when Markham was here, we went in the gravel pit, as you're coming into Haystack, and that's the first time I've heard a Bigfoot knock that actually had tone to it. And I've talked about this on S4 a few times. Why? Because it was weird. It was a boom, 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 boom. It actually made pitch. I've never heard that before. So again, you get the skeptics. Well, it was probably a woodpecker. Okay, have you ever heard of woodpecker? And have you ever
Yes.
compared it to a Bigfoot dog?
Yes.
There's a big difference. Woodpeckers don't make that.
They
No.
sounded absolutely alike to me.
Oh, no. Well, the skeptics make me laugh because it's like, yes, we've got woodpeckers here and we also have Bigfoot. So I've heard both of them. Now, Larry Anderson is our local Bigfoot guy that we go to for all of our questions and whatnot. One of his friends went, and I'm not sure where he went, but he went way up here, upriver, just to get away. And he was playing his guitar. Nobody around, no humans for miles. He played the guitar for like 2-3 hours. He left. He went back the next day to find a very large pile of flowers right where he was playing his guitar. He was gifted. It tells you right there, I think pitch and I think music. Maybe, not guitar, not like what we play, but I think music and tone is a part of their language. Hold on. I'm looking in the chat room here. Yeah, huge difference in sound. It's what they use whales when they're out of telepathic range. And I'm not. Don't take it offensive. I'm not a firm believer in telepathy with Bigfoot. I've never encountered it. I am a skeptic to some degrees with some things. Telepathy with Bigfoot is just one of those things. Not saying it couldn't happen. I've just never encountered it. And Robert says, no offense taken. I think you have to be open to it. I'm not. I'm about as closed off as they come, so I wouldn't be receptive to it anyway. It also goes with astral. Richard.
Yes.
So, have you ever encountered a Bigfoot astrally?
No, I haven't. Let's see. We haven't really actually gone looking for them.
Right.
Most of the areas we've done it tends to be more urban. So it's an interesting exercise, though. I keep doing that,
So I want to ask you this though. Why would the government take such an interest in Bigfoot? Could Bigfoot, if he was telepathic or had those kind of psychic abilities, be a part of our psychotropic or our psyops program?
That's interesting perspective. I know that the intelligence agencies saw psychic skills as sort of a early human psychic survival tool to help greater awareness about situations. Look, I would not be surprised if other species had the same thing. We just failed to recognize it.
Well, it's kind of cool because if you look at dolphins use sonar. We experiment with dolphins in sonar. They talk about the octopus and their ability to shapeshift to where you can't even see they're there because they blend right in. They take all these talents that nature has, that other animals have, and use them for both weapons and military, aspects. So why wouldn't they take these, psychokinetic aspects of Bigfoot, which is why they don't want you to know about it.
Yeah, I know nothing about this. Like I said, it's not something I've ever encountered, but definitely, other, I'm sure the government would be interested in how other species interact with each other, whether we call that psychic or not.
Right. Because I firmly believe he's not an animal. He's a supernatural creature. So it's not throwing the possibility that he isn't telekinetic. Or yeah. So yeah, there's always that possibility. I've just never. You don't hear too many stories about it. There are too many reports about it. But I would like to hear the wailing. If you can get a recording of that wailing, I'd love to listen to it and analyze it by all means.
Okay.
And the way he
Um,
talks about, well, the way he talks about wailing, it's almost like they were mourning something.
that's the way when you were talking about the different like the levels of it or whatever, when he was describing it, he was describing it at different like levels and kind of like pitches, kind of like they were trying to sound out directions from each other or something, maybe. Like kind of like a Marco Polo kind of game, maybe, kind of, or something. Like they were further this way or deeper that. It was hard to explain the way he was doing it, but it wasn't just a steady cry or, it was different pitches and levels and stuff.
He was saying a sentence.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah, no, I do think they have their own language, verbal language as well as possibly telekinetic, telepathic. There we go, telepathic. What I was trying to say. Um, and going by Tyler, who was our other Bigfoot guy that we talk to all the time, or used to. He got kind of busy on other projects, but they do migrate. They do go to higher elevations. They follow the food sources, essentially. And I think some of them do stay down here. You look at, again, you look at Lake Tai, and every winter you see tracks. So do they hibernate? I would have to say no. They do have
Now
family units. Huh?
the lower that brought up another one that Caleb, he was the one that was hearing the whales and the knocks between. He said that also right down here past the Dallas Bridge by right where that the corner kind of is past the fireworks stand going towards town. There was they were coming on the coming out of the driveway, and there was this figure, and he said it was dark and like a darkish brown, kind of like fur or something. And he said he couldn't quite distinguish between a crouch and 2 feet, being on 2 feet, but it was the fastest thing that he had ever even seen. That it just did not, no animal whatsoever, but it wasn't like you would picture a typical meandering Bigfoot either.
That's they are fast. So Steve, our drone operator that we had an encounter on Mount Higgins, Upper Finney area, and he came around a corner, and there was a Bigfoot crouched in the middle of the road, and it didn't hear him at first because he was in a car. It was a quiet car, so obviously it heard crunching gravel as it came around the corner. It stood up, it saw him, and it ran. Now he was in about as much shock as it was seeing him, probably. And it ran, and he sped up, and it was gone. He came to the corner, it disappeared. Now, it either jumped over a cliff or it went straight up a bank. And he came and got me. We went up there, 2 days later, and we actually saw the tracks. We saw the trail that it went down. But bears don't run on two legs. and this thing was a good 6 to 7 foot tall, so it was a young one. The older ones are generally between 9 and 12 foot. They're ginormous. So yes, they do crouch a lot. They are quick when they need to be. And again, I do believe they're interdimensional, so they can disappear at will anyway, if they don't run.
Okay, and I have three of them from little kids in first grade, kindergarten, and they're just kind of cute little things to kind of show how our little ones are, kind of being raised to accept Bigfoot or Mrs. Bigfoot, I guess you could say. We have Kenny who wants to know if a baby Bigfoot is still a Bigfoot or it's a little foot.
Oh, still a
And then
Bigfoot.
Jed is in the Jed is in the first grade, and he says, "Is Bigfoot in an apes family, or is he with other big feet?" And we've got one right here that says that there is no girl Bigfoot because there are no dresses big enough for them to wear.
Good point.
And that's it from the Munchkins.
Okay, good point. But yes, they are all Bigfoot. Although I believe there's a new movie coming out called Littlefoot or Little Feet. So yes.
One more.
Huh?
I got one more because I actually kind of wondered that myself. Tony wants to know why the population has never grown with Bigfoot, or why hasn't it come extinct yet? It seems to just kind of be, in between. It's like the race doesn't get bigger, more populated, but they are still being seen. They haven't become extinct.
I don't think they will become extinct. If you're talking, so if you stick with the interdimensional theory, it really doesn't matter. They go back to their own plane. But they are, they were here before humans. They're not primate. My opinion again. I'm not, I'm not trying to say it like it's fact. They could be primate. My opinion, they're not. I agree with Nikki. They are guardians of the earth here, essentially. If you look at Native American lore, Sasquatch means hairy man. Again, it depends on tribe. Different tribes have different names for them, but it's very much the same story. They're guardians. They're here. They're
you mean they
protectors.
They
They're
guard
protectors.
other things coming, like leaping into our world or out of...
No, they're protectors of the mountains, essentially.
Okay.
Now, would logging make them mad? I really don't think so. I think they are territorial on that side of it. So yeah, if you're logging a certain area that they've claimed is theirs, you might get a log thrown at you or a rock thrown at you, or But not all. If you look at loggers, not all loggers have had encounters. Every once in a while, you do have a truck driver that says, "Oh yeah, I've seen Bigfoot." You have deputies in Skagit County that have had Bigfoot encounters. So there's no doubt they're here. You know, um, there are family units. There's a lot of family units up in the Baker area. So there are female Bigfoot and children Bigfoot. They don't need a dress. They don't wear clothes. Let's see.
Well, that looks like all we got here. Oh, wait, there is one more. Sorry. Chris Kelly of Concrete and Cedar Grove wants to know why Bigfoot poop is never on the road. Bears poop in the road, dogs poop in the road, cats, bears, birds, blah, 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 but no Bigfoot.
Because they're more civilized than bears. No, I've been looking because I love to find some Bigfoot scat. But here's the question. how do we know what Bigfoot scat actually looks like? How do we know? You know, I've seen coyote scat. I've seen, because coyote scat usually has hair in it. Bigfoot scat, right? I mean, bear scat usually has bear, seeds and cherry pits, things like that, because they don't fully digest.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we even know what Bigfoot scat's going to look like? I mean, unless it's primate
Well,
in nature.
well, the Charmin bear, it kind of, little dances.
But yeah, no, that's an excellent point. I've never seen anything but bear and coyote scat in the middle of the road. And Robert says in the chat room, who knows if they don't pick up after themselves?
And people don't poop in the middle of the road usually, so,
Well, no, because people are too scared a car's going to come around the corner and they'll get arrested for indecent liberties. So, what do you think, Don?
I'm just sitting here listening and enjoying the conversation. I too think they're interdimensional, so it's part of the reason why you don't find them as often, or the populations and whatnot. But yeah, no, I would love to one of these days go up there and hear the knocking and hear the wailing and whatnot.
in Cumberland.
No, you've got it in California. Go to Yosemite.
True.
You've got a lot of Bigfoot activity, but in Yosemite you need to be careful about disappearing because missing 401 cluster maps are all over California.
I wouldn't think Bigfoot would want to hang out down there in California.
Maybe that's
Flatlanders.
Think about it. Maybe that's why the fault line hasn't. Oh God, the big earthquake hasn't happened yet because Bigfoot's keeping it safe. Who knows?
That's true.
I don't know. Just a thought. So you think they're interdimensional as well, Don?
Yeah, I can't see us as much as there's been sightings about it and people going out and looking. I think it makes more logical sense because if people are out there looking for it, they see us before we see them, then they flip over to the next dimension. It would explain why the hunters don't see it.
So the next question to ask, I guess, would be why is the government hiding it so much? Why are they locking off the national forests? Why are they keeping people out of the national forests? I honestly think it's because of Bigfoot partially. Because there's areas of the national forest that you're not allowed to have a drone. Why? Are they hiding something? I mean, we've got a missing woman up in Marble Mount. We can't take a snowmobile team in because it's national forest. Oh my God, the snowmobiles might erode the soil. Get the hell over it. There's a missing woman. I think snowmobiles going up there is more important than your soil erosion. My point with that is, do they have an agenda with their priorities, or are they really that naive to think snowmobiles once or twice a year is going to erode the soil of the national forest? Do you think there's more to it?
Well, Bigfoot, he is absolutely safe upon justice land.
Oh, hands down. I think the government is worried. I think it has to do with economy. How many forests would be shut down to loggers, for example, if all of a sudden they came out and said, yep, Bigfoot's here and he's an endangered species and we can't let you log the land anymore.
Sierra Pacific. Oh no, where would they go?
Well, look at the spotted owl in Oregon. That hit the logging industry hard in Oregon when they came out with the spotted owl and said, oh, it's endangered. You can't cut the trees down no more.
Yeah, because
Wouldn't that be a shame, though, if Sierra Pacific had to stop all operations on Haystack?
Yeah,
have
somebody
to
else
open
would
it
buy
up.
it. That wouldn't happen. I think that's why they're so protective about keeping him secret.
Hmm.
You know.
Now, Sierra Pacific, they're greedy.
And Nikki's asking, so they're actually stopping people from certain sections of the national forest? Yes, they are, especially in the Darrington area. So, we got anything else on Bigfoot?
Well, there's lots, but probably not tonight.
So we're about to wrap. We're about to go ahead and wrap up the show for tonight. Because we got daylight savings time. We've got a community meeting tomorrow for anyone local that's listening. Meet us at the community center in Concrete from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. tomorrow, Sunday. And we'll talk about Meet Your Neighbors, the Map Your Neighborhood program. If you want to talk about Adamwaffen Division and the terror threats up here, we can do that. But most importantly, meet your neighbors before the snow comes. Snow comes, power goes out. Are you prepared? So I will have handouts for you. If you want to join and form a CERT team, which is a community emergency response team, I will have a sign-in list because I need a sign-in list to take to the Department of Emergency Management to show them the need that we need a CERT team up here. Here's how many people want to be on the team. We need classes now. We all need to get certified, me and myself included. So, with that, and real quick, so Nikki's asking regarding happenings in the forest with vortexes and or portals. I can agree with that, Nikki, to an extent. Why does the government care if people disappear through vortexes and portals? It wouldn't really affect them. It'd be population control for them. So I don't see them stopping us from going in the mountains because we might walk through a vortex or a portal. Just my thoughts. So next week is Veterans Day. Veterans Day weekend. And she says, unless it's something they created. You know what? Go back and listen to the archives, and we'll actually discuss Missing 401 probably in a future show going into next year. If you guys want a topic, by all means, send me a message, especially if you're local, you want to hear something, let us know, and we'll get a topic up there. It's coming up on December. Well, technically, we still got a month, but
Dave put Christmas card.
I'm looking here at my schedule. Veterans Day show. So if you've listened to our past Veterans Day shows, it does get pretty intense. You hear what really happens in war from us. Honestly, I miss the hell of the Army. I'm finding myself not, I don't even know how to say it, but not being able to relate to certain civilians. And it gets frustrating because of what we do. So anyway, I'm not going to go ahead and go getting sentimental and crap on you. But next week, Veterans Day show, we will be talking about some pretty intense stuff, just to give you a heads up. and PTSD and the effects of PTSD, suicide rate. We'll give you some crisis phone numbers, things like that. How's the VA treating us? And we're really, I bring in politics into this show because it gets really heated really fast. Same with the Concrete Upriver Group. That's why there's no politics. Everyone's got an opinion. That's what makes this country great, because everybody's got an opinion. You know, there's countries out there.
Mine's the best.
You can't have an opinion in some countries. You get killed. Iraq got to have their first voting session when we were in Iraq in 05, 06. You know, something that we take for granted. They were excited. 90% of the country went out and voted. Did it matter? Probably not. But point is, they were excited to be able to vote. Half this country doesn't vote because, I'm just too lazy to go out tonight, or whatever the reason. Vote. Anyway, next week, November 9th, our Veterans Day show. I want to thank Don Davidson, our California consultant and Army veteran, Jamie Justice, our upriver consultant and our neighbor, and Richard Benak, astral instructor and our Air Force intelligence veteran. So, until next week, y'all stay safe. Spread the word about S4. And if you're local, we will see you tomorrow at the community center. So y'all have a great night. And don't forget, fallback time is in 20 minutes. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, Eric.
Good night.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight on S4, the official voice of Forest Moon Paranormal. You can contact S4 through our website at www.s-4radio.com or on Facebook. Make sure you give us a like on our page and join the Forest Moon Paranormal group. If you are interested in advertising, take a look at our packages and contact Cole or Eric at 1-360-999-2830. Again, thank you. And remember, keep your eyes to the sky.